Hi, friends. We're starting this episode with a bit of a content warning. This episode contains references to crime and suicidal ideation, so please take care while listening.
As a kid growing up, the first time I seen somebody get killed, I was 5 years old, buying ice cream. Something that's, a very innocent thing for a child to do. And then in the steamy, hot, concreted summers of Chicago was just, escape for us. The ice cream trucks come down the street, you hear the song playing, and, kids immediately flock to it, with dollar or quarters in hand, right? My experience that day was just a picture of how inescapable violence was for me and for the kids like me growing up in the neighborhood that I grew up in. That sense of survival was immediate from that point forward. A lot of it was just a matter of this individual approach to just trying to make it to the next day. I look back upon that, very, very terminal way of thinking, but it was a normalized way of thinking for kids like me. And I don't know if that way of thinking led me to getting shot, when I was very young. I was 13 years old on my way to school.
This is Roslyn Hernández, and this is the Chasing Justice podcast. Welcome to our new season titled, We Got Us, Stories of Faith, Justice, and Collective Hope. This season is an immersive journey that invites you to witness how neighbors and local leaders are answering a powerful question. How do we acknowledge brokenness and challenge oppression to cultivate and preserve communities so everyone can flourish? In communities that are often marginalized, people are still creating spaces of hope, justice, and shalom. In these stories, our guests say, even when systems fail us, we rise together because we got us. In this episode, we have Jamal's story, a story that reminds us of the all too common injustice and divestment in communities of color that lead to young people thinking they have limited choices. But it is also a story of gospel hope, of defeating the odds, of restoration, of community, of integration, and of love.
Tune into the CCDA podcast, where we're dedicated to seeing flourishing communities with Christians holistically engaged. Our network of Christians is passionate about community transformation. Experience powerful teachings from our annual conference, engaging interviews, and enriching training courses. Join us as we journey together towards shalom with the Christian Community Development Association.
Jamal Bakr was born and raised in the southwest side of Chicago, in the Back of the Yards neighborhood. During his childhood and teen years, violence was a common occurrence in his neighborhood, but being shot by an adult gang member when he was 13 years old, while on his way to school, was different. At that point, Jamal was not associated with any gang, but that moment was a turning point for him.
My mom says I was always smiling, and that point forward in my life, it really changed. I suffered a gunshot wound to my back, lost feeling in my legs, and it just completely changed my life and the way that I thought about my future. It went from this, idea of violence being around me, but now violence being directed towards me was entirely different. It made that survival sense and even more, hyperactive. I didn't feel supported domestically and institutionally by the churches and by the schools. I didn't feel the support. And then you had, the institution of law enforcement, who in many ways was waging a war against our community. The war on drugs was active in our community. And so I didn't feel safe. I joined a gang, if not for anything, for protection. And now I know that, I was harming myself and harming my community. But I swear to you, Roslyn, at that time, I felt like that was the only place I can go to be safe. I didn't have a family. And they presented a sense of family, and I flocked to them. About 4 years after I was shot, I was arrested and taken to jail.
I want to note that although I won't go over specifics, Jamal did commit a crime. He has acknowledged it and takes full responsibility for it. So as an 18-year-old, Jamal was sentenced to 60 years in prison. That means he would get out of prison at the age of 78. He told me that sentence in itself communicated to me that I was going to die in prison. Jamal's first 6 years in prison were not easy. He was still in a gang, which meant that now opposing gang members were not just in another neighborhood or down the street. They were under the same roof and sometimes even in the same cell. So he still had to rely on a survival mentality and violent behaviors. But now he was also inside an oppressive system that told him explicitly, every day, and in so many ways, that he was inherently bad. In those first years, Jamal saw his peers get time in segregation, or even indefinite segregation sentences. They were kept away, isolated, never to be seen again. As Jamal describes it, they disappeared.
And I found myself going down that same path. You have zero contact with, other than writing letters, you have zero contact with your loved ones. And I saw the relationships that meant most to me, I saw them deteriorating. And it was the hardest thing because it was the only part of my identity that I had left that told me that I was good, told me that I was better than a 60-year sentence, told me that I was worth saving, told me that I was worth living. And so I hung on to those as much as I could. I wrote letters almost every day to anybody that I could send them to, just to kind of stay alive. Yeah. I'm sorry.
So how did you make that change? What prompted?
I guess you can say like the same thing that motivated me to be in a gang, the fear of dying alone. When I was sitting in a cell with nothing. I mean, when I say nothing, there was no mattress, no pillow. I was in a strip cell. Everything was taken away from me because I kept fighting with staff. I sat on the floor in my cell, and I contemplated suicide. I just didn't have anything to kill myself with. And I don't know, I prayed to God so hard. I prayed, I was like, man, if you can hear me, save me.
Jamal had received a birthday card sent by a Seventh-day Adventist church that simply said, Jesus loves you. Reading those words made him feel and remember the moment when he had been baptized as a teenager, just a few months before going to prison. After this and a visit from his mom, Jamal decided to change his life, to get out of the gang, pursue education, and help others. He described this process as 4 steps forward and 3 steps back. But he persevered, and little by little things got better, and he started taking advantage of education opportunities for himself and his peers.
I accumulated 100 credits. I maintained a 4.0 GPA. I ended up getting my Master's of Arts in Christian Ministry and Restorative Justice in 2022.
Jamal graduated summa cum laude and was chosen by his class to give the graduation speech. As he walks up to the podium, he's clearly nervous, but he goes on to thank professors, institutions, his classmates, his family, his wife Donna, who has been an incredible support for him. And then he goes on to name the transformative impact of their education and their time together.
We too have been touched, and now the way that we move through the world will be different. We acknowledge and accept our inheritance and the responsibilities of serving and leading our communities. Where once we were parts of the epidemics of gun violence and drug addictions, we now long to be parts of the solutions. And our freedoms are forever bound up in one another. We are still family members and friends, but we are much more than labels given to us. We are not the sums of our mistakes, and we are not just the sums of God's forgiveness. We are the sum of a liberative education and a transformative justice. As agents for change and restoration, we help make this facility safe too. And we are prepared to make any community we find ourselves a part of safer.
At the time of this speech in June of 2022, Jamal still had about 40 years left on his 60-year sentence. But Jamal, his lawyers, his family, friends, and community leaders had been working to get a reduced sentence. Later, his sentence was reduced. Then they worked for the possibility of parole. And in late 2024, a parole board heard his case. At the parole board hearing, Jamal's law team and Pastor Phil sit at a table facing the board. Pastor Phil is one of Jamal's professors. He's also the founder and CEO of the Firehouse Community Center of Chicago, a nonprofit that seeks to interrupt cycles of violence in the community of North Lawndale. He's there because he has already offered Jamal a job at the firehouse. Behind them, there sits a crowd of about 30 people, other professors, friends, community leaders, and family who are there to support Jamal. As the hearing begins, Jamal's lawyer gives accounts of his numerous achievements. Then, members of the parole board ask Jamal several questions about his sentencing, the history of his case, and about the crime he committed. And finally, after about an hour and 15 minutes, they get to the motion.
Any motion you want to make at this time?
I do have a rationale as well to support the recommendation. Mr. Bakr has served 23 years for an offense in which he, at the age of 18, murdered a 16-year-old and injured another party. His disciplinary record also documents serious transgressions from early in his incarceration. Still, over the last 10 years, he has established a remarkable record clear of any disciplinary tickets and replete with educational, occupational, and personal accomplishments and volunteer endeavors. The level of respect that he has attained within the institution and positive contributions he has made strongly suggest that his release would not be detrimental to institutional discipline. In fact, as is quite rare, a former warden has indicated to this board that his professional assessment is that Mr. Bakr's release would be an asset to discipline within the institution. We also are tasked with considering whether Mr. Bakr could be expected to conform to the conditions of release. Again, it's noteworthy that he has attained increasing levels of trust in the past decade, and for the same duration has not received a single ticket. He has a strong parole plan with a home that his wife has already acquired, concrete offers of employment, and a robust support system.
As the board member continues, she names the other things the board needs to take into consideration. They have to consider whether granting parole will undermine the loss and pain inflicted on the families of the victims. It must be hard for them, she says, to see Jamal's sentencing diminished. It must be hard to see all the community support that he has now when one of the victims died as a 16-year-old. You'll hear him referenced as Mr. Ortiz shortly.
That said, it is my impression that Mr. Bakr understands his release would not alleviate his debt to society. To paraphrase his words, he is committed to living his life in service, to honor the harm that he caused by preventing this madness from happening to others. It is only because of my belief that he is genuinely poised to prevent other families from having to suffer the depth of the loss experienced by Mr. Ortiz's family, and my impression that release would not be alleviating Mr. Bakr of his sentence, but rather would be releasing him to the next phase of his reparations, that I do find his release would not deprecate such a devastating offense. And it's on that basis that I do move to grant parole to Mr. Bakr.
Motion's been made. Do we have a second? Mr. Delgado seconds the motion. Amy, would you please call the roll?
Bakr?
Yes.
Mr. Boland?
No.
Mr. Coates?
Yes.
Mr. Delgado,
Aye.
Mr. Grubbs,
No.
Mr. Heaton.
No.
Ms. Tronis,
Yes.
Ms. Tyson,
Yes.
Mr. Doobie.
Yes.
With a 6-3 vote, his parole is granted. Mr. Baker, you are done. We will send everything to the facility, okay?
Thank you.
Chasing Justice hosted a Chicago pilgrimage over the 4th of July weekend of 2025. That's when I first met Jamal. He had been out of prison for about 6 months. He's 41 years old, out on parole 37 years before his original sentence. He's working with Pastor Phil at the Firehouse Art Center, serving teens and young adults in the Lawndale area, where there are mostly Black and brown communities. Before he gave a presentation for the pilgrimage, Jamal gave me and my colleague, Pastor Tyler Burns, a tour of the firehouse. And here is something he told us about how they encourage and empower the teens they work with.
How you want to harness it, how you want to use it. You want to dance? Is that something you want to do? You want to rap? Do you want to make music? If it's through the arts, if it's not, that's cool. But what do you want to do with the power that's already inside of you? You know what I mean? And that I saying I love you is a recognition of the power that's inside of somebody. And when they get scared, it's because they don't know it's inside of them yet. So if I can do anything, I can just be a mirror for them on an everyday basis. Like, man, yeah, you're beautiful. Yeah, you're worth it. Yeah, you're talented, even if you don't know it yet. With the hopes that they're going to be that mirror to somebody else too, you know?
A month after the Chicago pilgrimage, I'm talking to Jamal online, and he says,
The most selfless thing that a social justice advocate can do is to fight for a freedom that they know won't be realized in their lifetime. It's not for them, it's for somebody else. That's the way I look at this work, period. The work of community violence interruption and prevention. The kids that I work with, they might not see a day without shooting, a week without shooting, a month without shooting, a year without murders, but their kids might. And I tell them that's something that they might have to accept. But if we're moving in that direction, actively moving in that direction, individually and communally, right, then we're bringing about the change, no matter how slowly it is. We're bringing about the change that we so desire for ourselves.
Since we met in July, Jamal has gone on vacation with his family, gone back to work, and even got a promotion. He's now continuing his work on creating curriculum on topics like racial injustice, conflict resolution and de-escalation, and trauma and healing. Jamal emphasizes holistic approaches that implement the individual, the community, intergenerational awareness, self-awareness, practical life skills, trauma-informed guidance, spirituality, dialogue, and more.
So that way we can navigate the world in more healthy ways. And that's what I've been doing. And because I've designed the curriculum, I am currently training the mentors on how to deliver it. But at the same time, I am administering it. And so to a group of 17 youth between the ages of 18 and 28 right now. And I'm with them 4 days a week at 2 separate locations for 20 hours a week. My curriculum sessions are like an hour and a half, 2 hours every day for 4 days a week. And I love it. It gives me the life fuel that I need. It gives my heart so much healing just to do the work and to be with the kids that are doing the work too, that are at least attempting to do the work of securing their future when the world around them tells them that they don't have one.
In January of 2021, Reverend Alicia Reese, a North Park Seminary alum, preached a sermon at Trinity Evangelical Covenant Church that was written by Jamal. At the time, he had about 41 years left on his 60-year sentence and was in his third year of his master's program. Jamal's sermon focuses on the story of Paul and Silas in prison from Acts 16.
I too found myself in the belly of a prison, singing at the top of my lungs and waiting for my earthquake. But there aren't any fault lines in Chicago. My earthquake, it didn't come in the form of some divine seismic activity. My story of liberation came because of people who believed that their work was about more than just saving my soul. They would tell you that fighting for my freedom was hard, that they had to put their own victories to the side, that they had to sacrifice their own freedoms so that another could go free. And I promise you, I jumped at the first opportunity. They never stopped praying. They never stopped writing the lawyers, the state's attorneys, and judges. They never stopped shaking the foundation of a corrupt system that has held me captive for 20 years.
The community that rallied around Jamal shook those foundations, and thanks to their efforts, he is free. But more than 100 students have entered the master's program that Jamal joined while in prison. From his cohort, only a handful have been resentenced and released. The rest remain in the broken system of the prison industrial complex. And while Jamal's release is rare, his desire to work on disrupting the school-to-prison pipeline is not rare amongst his cohort peers. So I'm left wondering why. Why is incarceration mainly a system of punishment instead of rehabilitation, restoration, and reparations? The board member reading the motion said that granting parole would be releasing Jamal to the next phase of his reparations. And it has. Jamal now works to make sure that young people in North Lawndale and the surrounding neighborhoods know that they have options, talents, hope, and a future. He works to disrupt the cycles of violence and incarceration in those communities. He works to let young people know and to show them that they have inherent worth and power and that they are loved. And he and other leaders work to show not just these young people, but their whole communities, that they too can say, "We got us."
So we have listeners are like millennials and Gen Z who are like justice-oriented individuals. Some are that are at the beginning of their justice journey. Some are like in the middle of it or have been in the middle of it and are feeling tired.
Yeah.
Do you have any practical pieces of advice that you can give them?
The best piece of advice I've ever gotten is what I'm going to give them.
Oh.
There is a thing called a sanctified no. You saying no to somebody is you saying yes to yourself. Soul care is the only thing that's going to sustain you on your journey and on your fight. And if you look at justice as a fight, then you have to be prepared for what the cost of a fight is. I don't want you to think about fighting in a violent way, but I want you to think about the effort that it takes to get ready for a fight and how that is constant and how there are going to be moments of defeat, how you're going to feel like you're not making an impact. And I said this at the Justice Conference, and I'll say this now. Do not listen to the demons that are telling you that you can't do the work. Don't listen to the people that are saying that you can't. Because when you make the world that you desire to make, because you can see the world in a way that other people can't, because people are telling themselves it is what it is, and you're saying, no, it's not. It doesn't have to be this way. Those people that are saying it is what it is, they're going to love the world that you create. They're going to love living in it. So just breathe, pray, eat, love, and take care of yourself so that way you can be there and fight for others. That's what I always say.
That represents the intergenerational heartbeat of justice work. Jamal said, "The most selfless thing a social justice advocate can do is to fight for a freedom that they know won't be realized in their lifetime." Gospel hope calls us to keep believing and working for collective flourishing, even when the odds are against us. It calls us to plant seeds we may never harvest. It calls us to trust that someone after us will taste the justice we dared to imagine. Before we wrap up, Jamal shares some practical advice and encouragement for you, our listeners.
Yeah, I mean, I know what it's like to live in a world where the world communicates to you that you will not outlive your circumstances, that you are no better than your circumstances. I know what it's like to feel like you have no future, that the life that you want to live is not within your reach, and that you shouldn't try. But I'm here because I didn't believe it. Your faith should make you feel defiant, and it should make you be relentless towards the very things that you want for yourself and others. Like the definition of faith is believing in something that you cannot see. So I would say hang on to that and allow that to keep you defiant and for you to remain relentless in that effort. Period.
This podcast season was made possible by the Storytellers Grant from Christians for Social Action. This episode was produced, content edited, and narrated by me, Roslyn Hernández, with video and sound editing by Nassim Bolis. The theme song for the season is We Got Us. It was produced in collaboration with Common Hymnal. And last but not least, a special thanks to Jamal Bakr for sharing his story. To learn more about Jamal's story, check out the show notes. If you haven't already, share, like, and subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And please keep the conversation going on YouTube comments. This episode is available on our YouTube channel, and you can find us at ChasingJustice_. That's Chasing Justice without any spaces. ChasingJustice_.